Chapter 181. Each show their skills. In the Hyuga main house, Hiyashi held a teacup a few centimeters from his lips, frozen as if struck by the Nara clan's shadow paralysis jutsu. Across from him, Neji sat tense and silent. After a long moment, Hiyashi finally spoke slowly. The Akatsuki are brazen. Even now, they have the nerve to sneak into Konoha. Neji said nothing. Hiyashi raised the teacup and took a sip. Still, he added after a pause, this could be an opportunity for the Hyuga clan. Neji leaned forward. What do you mean? Information on the Akatsuki is the most valuable intelligence right now, Hiyashi said. Whoever can supply it can fetch a high price. He narrowed his eyes. The Hyuga had always shown deference to the Hokage succession, but Hiyashi had never forgotten the humiliation of years past when a Kumo leader had broken into the main house to abduct Hinata. Hiyashi had killed the Kumo intruder, yet the village had failed to protect Hyuga dignity and had coerced the clan into handing over Hiyashi as a life-for-a-life bargain. If Hizashi had not volunteered in his stead, Hiyashi might have been sacrificed. That incident had shattered the clan's standing and left Hiyashi deeply resentful. The annihilation of the Uchiha had only confirmed his fear. Even noble clans with dojutsu bloodlines could be sacrificed by the village leadership. I can't take on the village, Hiyashi said quietly, but if Neji could be used to gain access to Akatsuki intelligence, the Hyuga would have leverage. After a long pause, he asked, Neji, who else knows about this? I reported it to you as soon as I confirmed their departure, Neji replied. Good. Hiyashi nodded. We don't know the identities yet. Don't report this to the village for now. Yes, Neji answered. As for the clan's test, Hiyashi continued, we'll see to it that you pass. Don't worry. Relief flooded Neji inwardly. He mouthed silently, Phew, finally the adults have done their duty. Hiyashi added, and follow on from earlier events. There must be a reason the Akatsuki are recruiting you that goes beyond the Byakugan. Be vigilant and try to discover why they want you. That was another reason Hiyashi had kept it from the village. He could not imagine why the Akatsuki would take interest in a ninja still in the academy. Even for the Byakugan, they could make better choices. There had to be some hidden motive, one likely tied to the Hyuga. Meanwhile, at the temporary Kumo base, a communications squad ninja burst into the Raikage's office. Lord Raikage, the sensor team just detected Lady Yugito Ni's chakra. With a whoosh, the fourth Raikage was on his feet. Where? Not only the Raikage rose, Killer Bee, she, and the other Kumo officials turned to the messenger. Not far, the messenger replied, moving to the large map on the wall and circling an area. Within the Land of Fire, about 100 kilometers from Konoha. She's face darkened. How is that possible? Killer Bee shook his head. Something's off. 100 kilometers might sound far to civilians, but for Shinobi, especially elite Jonin, it was nothing. At full speed, they could reach it within half a day. For the Akatsuki to hold a captured Jinchuriki so close to Konoha seemed deliberate or a trap. Is the intel reliable? The Raikage demanded. The sensor team has confirmed it repeatedly, the messenger said. Yugito's chakra signature is moving. They're tracking her. Is it a trap? Killer Bee asked the Raikage. She interjected. Lord Raikage, trap or not, we must try to rescue Lady Yugito Ni. Indeed, the Raikage said, gesturing. We'll go. Let's move to the Hokage building. The Kumo delegation arrived at the Hokage's office. The third Hokage frowned when he heard. Raikage, are you sure? The Akatsuki are moving Yugito Ni, the fourth replied. Our sensor team is tracking her. We don't have much time. The third Hokage called for a meeting. The Tsuchikage, Mizukage, and Kazekage soon arrived with their escorts, and Konoha's elders gathered. After a brief briefing, the third Hokage turned to them. What do you think? Onoki, the third Tsuchikage, declared. Either the Akatsuki have gone mad, or this is a deliberate setup. The fourth Kazekage frowned. Using the same trick again? That would be arrogant. Last time, the Akatsuki had won because they caught everyone by surprise. Repeating the same ploy would be hubris. The fourth Raikage slammed a fist on the map table. How long are we going to argue? Even if it's a trap, can't we break it? Many present agreed at once. When had the 5 great shinobi nations tolerated such humiliation? If the Akatsuki were making a move, the high-ranking ninja wanted to test their strength. The third Hokage proposed a vote. Those in favor of action, raise your hand. He raised his own hand for Konoha. The fourth Raikage raised his. The Tsuchikage and Kazekage followed, all eyes fixed on the Mizukage. He hesitated. He had just received intelligence indicating the Akatsuki had tried to recruit a planted agent in Konoha. For the Hidden Mist, it would be prudent to let their agent infiltrate the Akatsuki and gather intel before acting. But watched by the other Kage, he raised his hand. The Hidden Mist agrees. With that consensus, an elite united force was assembled. Kumo led the way. Raikage and the Eight Tails Jinchuriki AB pairing deployed again, accompanied by 2 Jonin squads. Because of Jinchuriki's safety was at stake, Jiraiya represented Konoha, accompanied by a Jonin and Special Jonin squad, Kakashi, Asuma, Might Guy, and Kurenai Yuhi. Iwagakure sent Kitsuchi with a Jonin squad. Tsunaakure deployed 2 teams, a puppet corps under Chiyo, and a Jonin unit led by Pakura, the Scorch Release user. The Hidden Mist sent an assassination squad headed by Zabuza. Dozens of elite shinobi gathered, and under cover of night, they slipped out of Konoha, racing toward the area where Kumo's sensors had picked up Yugito's chakra. At the same time, a ninja from the Grass Village used a transformation technique to take Karin's appearance and replace her in the apartment, allowing the real Karin, under Grass Village direction, to quietly leave Konoha. Under cover of the Hidden Mist, Haku slipped out unnoticed and waited in the agreed forest. Whoosh, several figures landed among the trees. Haku's heart tightened. 8 figures stood under the night sky, all wearing Hidden Mist assassination uniforms and masks. 2 of them removed their masks as they approached. One was a striking young woman. "Are you Haku?" "Yes. My name is Mei Terumi," she said. "I'm the leader of this operation. This is Kisame Hoshigaki, my deputy." After introducing themselves, Mei added, "Focus on passing the Akatsuki's test. We'll support you from the shadows." Kisame grinned. "Don't mess it up, kid." They weren't worried about being detected. Everyone on the mission was an elite Hidden Mist specialist in silent assassination and stealth. And no matter how formidable the Akatsuki might be, they would likely assign only 1 member to recruit a child still in the academy. If they could hide and help Haku pass the assessment and infiltrate the Akatsuki, so much the better. If discovered, they would act swiftly to seize the assessing Akatsuki member. That was why Hidden Mist had sent Mei, Kisame, and 6 other experts. Elsewhere, under Orochimaru's arrangements, Kimimaro slipped out of Konoha. At the meeting point, he found Yakushi Kabuto, glasses pushed up, waiting with a smile. Kimimaro knew Kabuto as Orochimaru's trusted aide and assumed his strength was at least Jonin level. Kabuto said, "Kimimaro, I'll assist you throughout the Akatsuki assessment." "Where is Lord Orochimaru?" Kimimaro asked. "Don't worry," Kabuto replied. "The master is watching." Kimimaro suppressed his excitement. "Let's go." Back at the Hyuga main house, a branch family member whispered to Hiashi, "Patriarch, dozens of shinobi just left the village. Their destination is unknown." Hiyashi's face darkened. "Who were they?" "It looks like the united force you mentioned at the meeting," the messenger said. "They moved so quickly?" Hiyashi murmured. Joint operations between the 5 nations were usually slow and racked with friction. He hadn't expected them to launch so fast. But in his mind, this only confirmed an opportunity. The United Forces' departure was a secret operation, and its focus wasn't likely the Akatsuki member in Konoha trying to recruit Neji. With the 5 nations' attention elsewhere, Neji's trip to the Akatsuki assessment could proceed. Hiyashi summoned Neji. "Let's go, we leave now." You're coming with me?" Neji blurted. Hiyashi nodded. He had thought long and hard and decided he alone could be trusted to lead the team. Like the Hidden Mist, he judged that the Akatsuki would devote little effort to recruiting an academy student. Likely only 1 member would do the assessment. With the Byakugan, Hiyashi felt confident he could evade surveillance. Neji opened his mouth to argue, but nothing he could say would be convincing. He fell silent and followed Hiyashi's arrangements, slipping out of the village along with him. So on this seemingly ordinary night, people from every corner unleashed their unique skills and raced in different directions toward different goals, each driven by their own motives. In the darkness, a pair of crimson eyes watched it all in silence. 2 chapters in 1. Please give recommendation votes and monthly votes. Only 2 days left. Students with monthly votes, remember to vote. A street in Konoha. Sasuke, hands jammed into his pockets, looked thoroughly annoyed. "Why are you following me? I told you I want to be alone. Naruto threw his hands behind his head. I'm not following you. You've been with me the whole way, Sasuke snorted, pouting. Don't forget, I have a Sharingan, Naruto complained. Sharingan? Sharingan? I'm sick of hearing it. Shinji never goes on about his Sharingan. That's because he doesn't have one. So what if you do? You still ended up in the hospital. Naruto's voice softened. Sasuke's expression went cold. What did you say? You heard me. Why ask? Naruto pouted, then went on. Sasuke, everyone planned a dinner to celebrate your discharge from the hospital. Why aren't you going? No interest. Sasuke ignored him and started toward his apartment. Everyone's worried about you. Naruto hurried to keep up. I don't need that, Sasuke said flatly, his eyes growing harder. After being crushed by Itachi, he had convinced himself that bonds weakened him. He pulled away from others not only out of pride, but because he feared that one day he might lose control, chasing power, chasing a Mangekyo that eclipsed his three tomo, only to turn on his friends. Better to have no friends at all. They left the busy street and walked down a tree-lined lane. Naruto chattered on, trying to coax him, while Sasuke answered only with scornful snorts. Then, clang! A sudden clash of metal came from nearby. A few dull thuds followed from the woods, as if someone hit the ground hard. Huh, what was that? Naruto turned back, puzzled. Sasuke had already pulled a kunai from his belt and stepped in front of Naruto. Blades up. Careful. What's wrong? You big idiot, Sasuke snapped, then peered toward the trees. Someone's fighting in there. Who? Sasuke rolled his eyes. Who else? The Anbu sent to guard you. Naruto squinted into the trees. Why is it quiet now? They must have finished it, Sasuke said. Light footsteps came from the woods, slow and unhurried, like someone strolling after a meal. Sasuke's face tightened, and he activated his Sharingan. Be ready. It's an enemy. Anyone who could handle Anbu that easily was dangerous. A figure stepped out from between the trunks, clad in the red cloud cloak. Sasuke's expression hardened with a flash of panic. Akatsuki, Naruto blurted. Red clouds. The figure gave Naruto a cold glance, then turned to Sasuke. Uchiha Sasuke, this doesn't concern you. Step aside. Knowing Naruto was the target, Sasuke gritted his teeth. Naruto, run! He's an Akatsuki with a Mangekyo Sharingan. I can't hold him off for long. What about you? Naruto asked. Sasuke snorted. You should worry about yourself. At least I have a 3-tomo Sharingan. I can protect myself. The Akatsuki member smiled. In a blink, he was in front of Sasuke. At a single look, Sasuke felt his body freeze. What? He choked. What did you do to Sasuke? Naruto shouted and lunged. A dull thud. Naruto took a heavy blow to the stomach and crumpled, folding in on himself. The masked figure turned back toward Sasuke without saying a word. Sasuke caught the disdain in the eyes, just visible beneath the mask, and exploded in fury. He struggled, but his limbs wouldn't respond. What kind of genjutsu was this? Helpless, he watched as the Akatsuki picked up the injured Naruto and vanished before his eyes. A few moments later, Sasuke stumbled, and his body came back to him with a ragged breath. He frantically scanned the area. There was no sign of Naruto. Why would the Akatsuki abduct him? He didn't stop to think. He sprinted straight for the Hokage's office. When the report reached the third Hokage, his brow darkened. Homura Mitokado and Utatane Koharu exchanged worried looks. Danzo's face was a mask of calculation. The Akatsuki brazenly infiltrating Konoha was bad enough, but their knowing exactly where Naruto would be and neutralizing the village's Anbu so cleanly suggested inside information. Danzo glared at Sasuke. How did the Akatsuki know Naruto's whereabouts? Did you give them the information? Sasuke stiffened, then snapped. What are you talking about? You! Impudent! Danzo barked and reached to order the Anbu to seize him. The third Hokage cleared his throat, his gaze cutting between them. The most urgent matter is rescuing Naruto. At that moment, the door flew open and Tsunade stormed in with Shizune. Uzumaki Naruto was taken by the Akatsuki? The third Hokage nodded. Tsunade frowned. Tell me exactly what happened. Who did this? Sasuke hurried to answer. A masked Mangekyo Uchiha, one of the Akatsuki, abducted Naruto. Which one, A or B? Tsunade asked. Sasuke hesitated, then said, the Mangekyo Uchiha who defeated the demon in the land of demons. A, Tsunade said, and the room fell heavy. A's strength had been proven in battle. Intelligence analysts suspected A might be the most powerful Uchiha in the Akatsuki, even stronger than Uchiha Itachi. That was why A was thought to lead the organization's secretive trio. The third Hokage looked at Tsunade. You came at the right time. It seems you'll need to go personally. Chapter 183, Test. As soon as the third Hokage finished speaking, the advisory elders all turned to Tsunade. The situation was delicate. The Akatsuki had already driven Yugito Ni out as bait and lured away a large number of elite shinobi from the 5 great nations. Now they had someone inside the village who had kidnapped Naruto. No one could say whether the Akatsuki had more plans in reserve. For the moment, the third Hokage would stay in the village and supervise things personally. But the one who had taken Naruto was A powerful Akatsuki member, and right now the only people in the village strong enough to face A were the advisory elders and Tsunade. Tsunade hesitated a moment, then nodded. She did not refuse this time. When Jiraiya had led his team away, he had specifically told her to protect Naruto. She had agreed, and now Naruto had been abducted. How could she stand aside? Seeing her consent, the third Hokage's tense expression finally eased. Sasuke stepped forward. He took Naruto right in front of me. I want to go too. The third Hokage looked at Tsunade. She answered, let him come. Under the third Hokage's direction, a temporary squad was assembled quickly. Tsunade took command. Alongside Shizune, who always followed her, the elders arranged for the Ino Shikacho trio, Shikaku Nara, Choza Akimichi, and Inoichi Yamanaka, plus Shibuya Barame and a Hyuga Jonin. With Sasuke, who insisted on joining, the group totaled 8. At the temporary base of the hidden rain village, a rain ninja pulled back a curtain and whispered, "What's going on tonight? Why is the Hokage building still brightly lit?" "Something's not right," another replied. "It's not just the Hokage building. Kumogakure, Kirigakure, Sunagakure, and Iwagakure outposts are all showing lights. I saw personnel moving earlier too." The two exchanged uneasy looks and reached the same conclusion. The 5 great shinobi nations were launching an operation tonight. Even if they couldn't confirm every tale, they sent the news back to the Hidden Rain village by messenger hawk. It was better to warn than to do nothing. Outside Konoha, Shinji stood on the crown of a great tree, holding the unconscious Naruto and staring at the village's myriad lights under the night sky. He knew that if he failed now, that peace would be gone forever. "I hope everything goes smoothly," he muttered, then vanished into the darkness without looking back. Every minute mattered. There was no time for sentiment. Riding through the night, he left traces as he organized his plan. He had cobbled together 6 teams. Karen with a squad from the Grass Village, Haku with a unit from the Hidden Mist, Neji leading a Hyuga force, Kimimaro with an Orochimaru contingent, a united forces assembly drawn out by Yugito Ni as bait from the 5 great nations, and an elite Konoha team drawn out by Naruto as bait. Because the operation had been put together hastily, Shinji could not be certain of the final strength of each team. When he used Yugito as bait, he had expected only a Kumogakure response, but the 5 great nations had acted decisively and sent a united forces instead, making that group's power far greater than the others. And when he coordinated with Neji through Jibi and asked the Hyuga to leverage Konoha's power, he had not expected Hiashi to break from the village and act independently. That left Neji's team much weaker than planned. The Hyuga had few true masters, and Hiashi was the only one of note. His combat record, however, had always been middling when facing truly powerful opponents. Other combinations, Karen and the Grass Village, Haku and Kirigakure, Kimimaro and Orochimaru, and Tsunade's pursuing team, had middling strength. Even the seemingly weakest pairing, Karen and the Grass Village, had a baseline thanks to Karen wearing a pair of Mangekyo Sharingan. Shinji felt a flicker of confidence. In his estimation, the power ceiling in the Demon Slayer world was such that even an upper moon with vast chakra could at best reach Kage-level strength. That meant that, barring mishaps, 5 of his 6 teams, all except Neji's, had the potential to eliminate an upper moon. The caveat was that only Haku and Karen knew the whole truth, and Neji knew some of it. The rest had been recruited through coaxing and deception, so many variables remained. After a moment's thought, Shinji decided to use the strongest force to scout first. The united forces not only included the dual Kage-level AB combination from Kumogakure, but also experienced fighters like Jiraiya and Chiyo and the largest number of troops. Sending them to recon the anchor points was his best bet. He activated Jibi and contacted Yugito, who was dozens of kilometers away and currently under Shinji's genjutsu control. With Jibi, Yugito, whose self-awareness had been suppressed, became an effective tool. Shinji could issue commands through Jibi, and she would carry them out. The limitation was range. Beyond a certain distance, Yugito would simply execute the last order she had received without further guidance. Shinji had to keep her within Jibi's contact range for complicated tasks. Yugito received the new command and immediately changed course toward a dense forest in the Land of Fire, one of the 5 anchor points. Inside the United Forces, Kumogakure's sensory unit noticed the shift in Yugito's chakra signature and reported to the 4th Raikage at their side. Lord Raikage, Lady Yugito's chakra response has changed. What kind of change? The Raikage demanded. The opponent seems to have noticed our tracking and altered her route, the censor replied. The Raikage waved his hand. Don't worry about it. Pursue directly. I want to see what those Akatsuki are really up to. Chapter 184, Silence. The United Forces were not only large but commanded by elite shinobi from several villages. Against the Akatsuki, a small bounty hunter organization, there was little to fear so long as they were not taken completely by surprise. Even knowing things might not be that simple, and that Yugito Ni's chakra signature ahead could well be a deliberate lure, the 4th Raikage showed no hesitation. He led the United Forces in pursuit toward the signature. A few hours later, they reached a primeval forest. Under the night sky, the woods were silent and oppressive. Everyone in the United Forces felt a chill. The Raikage turned to a nearby sensor ninja. Is it here? The sensor nodded grimly. Yes, Yugito Ni's chakra signature is in here. She stepped forward. Raikage, this area is full of swamps, and the forest contains a deadly miasma. Inhaling it causes whole-body paralysis. The Raikage only nodded. He had suspected as much without being told. Kakashi moved up beside Jiraiya. Jiraiya, we should warn him. This is very likely another Akatsuki trap. Jiraiya glanced at the Raikage's eager face and shook his head. It won't do any good. Asuma asked, Then do we go in alone? No, Jiraiya replied. If we stay together, no matter how strong the Akatsuki are, they can't touch us. Once we disperse, they'll have the chance to pick us off one by one. We must remain united. The units from Iwagakure, Sunagakure, and Kirigakure reached the same conclusion. The situation smelled like a trap, but the more it did, the more reason there was not to split up. The sensor ninja posted around the perimeter reported back. No enemy chakra detected outside the forest. Move out, the Raikage ordered. Without waiting, he was the first to rush into the trees. The Kumo teams followed, and the other villages did the same. The canopy was so thick it almost blocked out the moonlight. The forest was very dark. Fortunately, everyone present was a veteran. The light, or lack of it, did not slow them. But as they pushed deeper, the silence grew heavier. Not even an insect chirped. It tightened the knot of unease in every chest. What's wrong? There's not a single wild animal. Is it the miasma? Does the Land of Fire really have a place like this? What are the Akatsuki up to? To break the tension, people began whispering, exchanging nervous theories. No one stopped them. Everyone, including the Raikage, felt the pressure of the silence. The Raige turned to the Eight-Tails Jinchuriki, Killer Bee, who trailed close behind. Be careful. Bee murmured. The usual relaxed grin was gone from his face. He hadn't even brought his music scorebook. He'd left it behind at Konoha's temporary base. She kept scanning, constantly activating his sensory ninjutsu. His feedback matched the other sensor ninja. Within the range of their technique, aside from a faint chakra signature of Yugito Ni ahead, there were no other suspicious signatures. Jiraiya produced a handful of pills from his pouch and handed them to Kakashi and the others. Tsunade made these antidotes. If anything feels off, pop one in your mouth. Understood, they replied, taking the pills. The other teams made final preparations. No one relaxed. The silence only sharpened everyone's focus. Then a sensor ninja froze. A few more halted. The whole force came to a stop. The first sensor ninja who'd stopped reported, Raikage, Yugito Ni's chakra signature. It's gone. Shi's face tightened. Yes, it vanished suddenly. They must have used some method to deliberately suppress her chakra. Where was it last detected? Killer Bee demanded. The sensor pointed forward. That direction. About 10 kilometers. 10 kilometers was nothing for the elite shinobi present. They regrouped and sprinted toward the last known position. Moments later, with a rush of wind around them, the united forces surrounded an unremarkable cave in the forest. The sensor ninja approached cautiously, activated their senses, and subtly nodded. The readings confirmed Yugito Ni had been inside. Inside? An Akatsuki trap? A cave? Underground? They'd imagined countless possibilities, but not a simple cave. Footsteps sounded from within. Instantly, the field fell silent and every eye fixed on the entrance. A figure clad like a samurai emerged, walked to the mouth of the cave, and casually surveyed the united forces arrayed before him. Only one person. Look at his eyes. What are those characters? Upper rank, too? Even in the dim light, many noticed strange markings on his eyes. Kakashi, who had fought on the long street before, went cold. He pulled off his eye patch, revealing his Sharingan, and warned Jiraiya in a low voice. Jiraiya, be careful. This is the other Akatsuki cell mentioned in the archives. Chapter 185, Pipa Sound. On the long street, two groups of shinobi in the Akatsuki's red cloud robes fought with a ferocity that nearly leveled the town. Even now, the five great shinobi nations had no clear explanation for the battle. What they could identify, however, were the strange characters engraved in the opponent's eyes. One side bore the mark Upper Moon, while the other showed the numbers 5 and 6. From that, the nations inferred the attackers were an Upper Moon cell inside the Akatsuki, likely 6 strong. The members whose eyes read 5 and 6 had displayed elite Jonin-level power, so the archives recorded that the first 4 of this Upper Moon group might even rival a Kage in strength. The unit had vanished after the clash and did not re-emerge, so it was rarely discussed in later councils. But Kakashi, who had been at the Long Street battle, knew better than anyone that this group's strength matched or exceeded that of other Akatsuki members. When he caught sight of the numeral 2 engraved in one opponent's eye, his face tightened. He had just been confronted by a truly formidable enemy. The man was unmistakable, 3 pairs of eerie crimson eyes and a cold, unreadable expression. It was Kokushibo, Upper Moon 2 of the 12 Kazuki from the Demon Slayer world. Engraved eyes, it really is the Akatsuki. The 4th Raikage snorted, then bellowed at Kokushibo standing in the cave mouth. Hand over Yugito Ni. Kokushibo did not answer. He drew a long sword slowly from his waist. The Raikage activated his lightning release chakra mode. Blue chakra crackled across his body, his eyes narrowing, whisker marks bristling. Without another word, he struck like lightning and charged straight at the samurai-like Akatsuki who held the long blade. Everyone in the allied forces watched, waiting to see how the strange swordsman would meet the Raikage's full assault. But the instant the Raikage lunged, a clear, plucked note, a pipa, a biwa, rang from inside the cave. The Raikage's strike met empty air. He skidded, then froze as the scenery shifted. The forest and battlefield were gone. Around him stood a large mansion. People he'd been fighting with moments before were no longer where they had been. Kakashi felt it like stepping off a cliff. He dropped to the ground, scanned the surroundings with a sharp professional eye, and his expression turned hard. This is a genjutsu? He wondered, activating his Sharingan. He had seen many illusions. His Sharingan usually found at least the thinnest seam, an inconsistency to betray unreality. But here there were no seams. Everything felt solid, palpably authentic. Even the Sharingan could detect no illusion. Asuma bit his tongue and blinked. The sharp pain made him shake his head. No, he muttered. This isn't a genjutsu. Jiraiya withdrew his hand from the wall he'd been touching and whispered, Space-time ninjutsu. When the thought hit him, his stomach dropped. If the enemy could employ space-time techniques so easily, the Allied forces' numerical advantage was suddenly compromised. Worse, the way the teleportation had been triggered chilled him. Even his own disciple, the Yellow Flash, had depended on specially inscribed kunai to open space-time doors. This technique had activated with no hand signs, no formula-sealed tools, and not even a visible burst of chakra. No, it came from that biwa. Someone else in the cave is using it, Jiraiya realized. He bit his finger, formed hand signs in a blur, and slammed his palms to the ground. In a cloud of white smoke, the 2 toad sages, Shima and Fukasaku, sprang out of the earth. Little Jiraiya, what's the matter? Shima asked. Jiraiya explained the situation in quick, clipped sentences, then turned to the Toad pair. I'm going to need your help. Elsewhere down the long street, Zabuza and two hidden mist assassination squad operatives moved with the casual, watchful gait of hunters. Suddenly, Zabuza sniffed the air and signaled to his companions. Hold, the scent of blood. The two mist assassins sniffed and went still. A faint red tang hung in the night. They drew their long swords and followed Zabuza as he slipped into a narrow alley. They stopped short. Before them, a samurai-clad Akatsuki member knelt over the body of a rock ninja, tearing at flesh and devouring the corpse. Even in the village of the Bloody Mist, tales of cannibalism were whispered and screamed about as a way to frighten or shame. But this was different. The Akatsuki warrior, Upper Moon II, ate with visible relish. As he fed, Zabuza and the assassins felt something else. The man's chakra seemed to thicken and intensify, like the iron tang of blood itself. Stop this, Zabuza growled and formed hand signs. A thin mist rolled down the alley as he released his hidden mist technique. From the choking fog, one of the hidden mist assassination squad darted in and drove his sword into Kokushibo's back, straight through the heart. Blood arced and dripped as the assassin spat contemptuously. Humph, is that all you've got? Kokushibo turned slowly. His face was unreadable. His 3 pairs of crimson eyes regarded the attacker with cold indifference. Chapter 186, There is Nothing? You. For reasons he couldn't explain, the hidden mist ninja who had driven his long blade through Kokushibo's heart felt a cold stab of fear the moment Kokushibo looked at him, like prey sensing its predator. In an instant, Kokushibo drew his sword. The motion was seamless, without flourish, impossibly fast. With a single stroke, he cut the ninja cleanly in half at the waist. The severed body collapsed into a puddle of clear water with a splash. Kokushibo showed no surprise. His gaze slid across the fog-shrouded street. The man who had set the ambush, watching from within the mist, felt his hand tremble. He had not gone in himself because he knew the target was dangerous. He'd sent a water-release clone to probe. This man, he ground his teeth as cold dread spread through him. The feedback from his defeated clone had shown the clone's blade had pierced the opponent's heart, an injury that would incapacitate even a Kaj. Yet the opponent had acted as if a punctured heart meant nothing. Some kind of secret technique? Or is his heart not where it should be? A dozen guesses rushed through his mind. He wanted to warn his comrades, but they were still in the silent assassination phase, and the thick fog made transmitting information impossible. Then he felt an abnormal gust in front of him. A specialist in silent assassination, he moved to activate his body flicker, but a blade flashed across his vision. He spat blood and horror contorted his face. His body split neatly down the middle and fell in 2 lifeless halves, each thudding against the ground. Zabuza's expression darkened as the dull impacts reverberated through the fog. If one of their own had succeeded, a signal would already be sent, the sudden iron tang of blood, and those thuds told him someone had been cut down, likely one of his men. He snorted, stirring the mist with his long sword. I've been waiting for you. A blade flash streaked out and swept his sword in a single flawless motion that showcased his deadly skill. But the smile never reached his eyes. There was no enemy in front of him. Too late, he turned. Several blade flashes struck from all around. He did his best to block and evade, but when the exchange ended, he was wounded in several places. One cut so deep bone showed. How is this possible? He planted his blade and sculled, scanning the fog like a demon. It wasn't that he couldn't accept defeat. It was that he could not accept being so utterly outclassed in silent assassination swordsmanship. Reclaiming that lost blade would have made him a hidden mist swordmaster, worthy of the 7 swordsmen of the mist. Another hidden mist ninja rushed up to his side. Startled at Zabuza's battered state, he began to speak, but Zabuza signaled him to be silent. Before the man could nod, a blade flashed and his head slid free from his shoulders. The headless body toppled with a thud. Zabuza felt his soul leave his body for a moment. He formed hand signs, water release, great waterfall technique. A vast torrent surged up, and using its cover, he vanished from the street without hesitation, fleeing down another alley. As he ran, fear pressed at him. What sort of monster was the Akatsuki using? He'd never heard of such a being. He was certain of one thing. He was outmatched alone. If he was to survive, let alone defeat this enemy, he had to regroup with the others. On the wet, cobbled street, Kokushibo slowly sheathed his blade, expression blank. The killings had meant nothing to him. Aside from Zabuza, who had caused a momentary irritation, none of the ninjas had been worth his attention. A thunder of roars cut through the fog. Kokushibo glanced toward the noise and saw a figure wrapped in blue chakra charging straight down the avenue. Buildings and walls disintegrated like paper before him. It was the fourth Raikage in lightning-release chakra mode, barreling forward like a living cannonball. Just as the Raikage was about to smash into Kokushibo's position, the sound of a biwa rang out from the street. Kokushibo vanished. The Raikage crashed into the spot where Kokushibo had stood and raged. Damn it! Damn it! He realized someone was manipulating the city, refusing him a quick encounter with Kokushibo. Whoever controlled this place wanted to scatter the allied forces and pick them off. The scattered corpses of Rock and Hidden Mist Shinobi on the street confirmed this strategy. Elsewhere, Kakashi moved through the strange city on his own. He had already confirmed what he saw was not genjutsu. The city itself had been warped by space-time ninjutsu, scattering the allied forces throughout its streets. This is space-time ninjutsu that even surpasses my teacher's Flying Thunder God technique, he thought, a chill of respect in his voice. He heard battle nearby and rushed toward the commotion. In the backyard of a large mansion, he found puppet parts strewn everywhere, and two Sunagakure puppet masters slumped against a wall. One of them still breathed. Kakashi landed beside him. "What happened? Who were you fighting?" he demanded. The wounded puppet master pointed weakly in a direction. "Quick, go support Lady Chiyo. That man is a demon. He didn't." "Didn't what?" Kakashi asked anxiously, but the puppet master's words trailed off as his consciousness faded. Chapter 187. Hard Work. The heavily wounded Sunagakure puppeteer couldn't finish his sentence. Kakashi felt his heart drop and without hesitation sprinted toward the direction the man had pointed. A moment later he arrived on a long street. The scene was chaos. Bodies of United Forces soldiers lay scattered across the road. Sunagakure Elder Chiyo was commanding several puppets against the foe across from her, the Upper Moon II. Beside Chiyo were the injured Cloud Shinobi C, one arm hanging useless, and Yuhi, breathing hard and wounded. Yuhi brightened when she saw Kakashi. "Kakashi, you came just in time." Kakashi landed beside her. "Are you all right?" "I'll live," Yuhi panted, then glared at Kokushibo across from them. "Watch out. He's incredibly strong, fast, and his swordsmanship is razor sharp." Chiyo shot Kakashi a murderous look that she quickly suppressed. She had recognized him long ago as the son of the White Fang of Konoha. The White Fang had killed her son and daughter-in-law during the war, leaving her grandson Sasori to grow up lonely and extreme, a path that had led him to kill the third Kazekage and abandon the village. Now that the White Fang was dead, Chiyo knew the debt of revenge could only be sought through his son. Still, this opponent was the strongest she had ever faced, and they were trapped in this strange city. Their priority had to be survival. She forced herself to focus and said, "He isn't hurt by sword slashes, and poison doesn't affect him." "What?" Kakashi snapped. C added in a grim voice, "Any injury he takes heals at a visible speed. Even if you cut off a limb, it can regrow." Kakashi's expression hardened. He'd heard of an Akatsuki member named Hidan who had an immortal body, and had always presumed Hidan was the exception. That this Upper Moon II had similar abilities unsettled him. As the Raikage's aide, C had sharp observational skills. He continued, "He eats human flesh raw. Every time he eats, his chakra increases a lot." "Genjutsu doesn't work on him either," Yuhi said. "The sound of a biwa can wake him from illusions." The United Forces hadn't been idle. Despite suffering heavy losses, their skirmishes had yielded vital information about Kokushibo, his effective immortality, his regeneration and chakra boost from consuming flesh, and his immunity to many techniques. Chiyo turned to Kakashi. "Konoha boy, do you know sealing techniques?" Kakashi nodded. His teacher had been the fourth Hokage, and the fourth's wife was from the Uzumaki clan, so Kakashi had learned some sealing arts. But sealing wasn't his strength, and he wasn't sure he could bind this opponent. Across from them, Kokushibo rested a hand on his sword hilt and exhaled softly. Fifth form, Moonlit Calamity Vortex. Everyone tensed. With a whoosh, Kokushibo vanished from sight. Not only Kakashi, but Chiyo, C, and Yuhi widened their eyes. His speed had increased even beyond what they'd seen before. He launched into the air, his sword flashing, and each swing sent a sharp blade shadow cutting outward. The long street was instantly filled with ghostly slashes. Earth release, earth wall, Kakashi snapped, completing the seals and slamming his palms to the ground. The earth rumbled as a wall of packed soil shot up, blocking the blade shadows and shielding the united forces. Swish! Swish! The cutting sounds rang out and the earthen wall shattered into pieces. The force of the blade shadows sliced through it as if it were thin paper. Kakashi leaped back, astonished. He'd never seen a ninja cut through an earth wall with mere blade shadows. Kokushibo landed lightly and charged, sword swinging. Sixth form, perpetual night, lonely moon, incessant. A flurry of crescent blade shadows burst from the sword, sweeping toward the united forces as they tried to dodge. Kakashi and the others were trapped midair with no leverage. Through the clarity of his Sharingan, Kakashi realized Kokushibo had poured extraordinary power into that strike, some secret technique granting superhuman force. C could tell the same. Kokushibo had consumed a vast amount of chakra in that instant. No matter the cost, the ferocity of the attack had taken them by surprise and thrown them to the brink. In shinobi warfare, the most terrifying foes were those like the White Fang or the Yellow Flash, fighters who relied not on flashy, large-scale jutsu, but on blinding speed and blade skill. To ordinary shinobi, such opponents were like vegetables to be cut down. That helplessness washed over Kakashi and the others now. They knew what facing the White Fang or Yellow Flash had felt like for many villages. The blade shadows closed in. Just when it seemed all was lost, figures dove in front of Kakashi and the others and took the blows. Puppets, Chiyo's puppets, had intercepted the fatal strikes. Even without a stable foothold, a puppeteer can still manipulate puppets with chakra threads. Chiyo had saved them at the last possible moment. "Thank you," Kakashi said, breathing hard. Yuhi and C echoed his gratitude, wiping sweat from their faces. Chiyo's expression was shadowed and fierce. "My puppets are ruined," she said. "Run!" Without waiting, she turned and fled down the street. Left with no choice, Kakashi, Yuhi, and C retreated as well. Against an immortal like Kokushibo, they needed more forces and a plan to stand a chance. They needed to regroup, gather reinforcements, and find some way to counter a foe who healed instantly and grew stronger by eating flesh. For now, survival and withdrawal were the only options. Chapter 188, Infinite City. Watching Kakashi and the others flee, Kokushibo did not give chase. He turned instead to the fallen members of the united forces scattered along the long street. Though the recent fight had been brief, it had cost him. He had only recently begun experimenting with stimulating his chakra to augment his breathing method, so some inefficiency and unnecessary loss were inevitable. Moreover, a demon's body cannot refine chakra on its own. After any high-intensity fight, he had to replenish himself by devouring the flesh and blood of ninja. After slowly feeding on the bodies, he rose, chose a direction at random, and began to walk. This strange city was Nakime's infinite castle, the space created by the blood demon art of one of the 12 Kazuki. Inside the infinite castle, Nakime could rearrange space at will with her biwa. As long as they were inside it, who fought whom and where became a matter decided by Kokushibo and Nakime. That was why the 4th Raikage had found Kokushibo earlier, only to have Kokushibo vanish. Nakime had assessed the Raikage's strength and mobility as a risky match for Kokushibo. A prolonged duel with the Raikage would drain Kokushibo's chakra and squander the chance to pick off United Forces members one by one. So the moment the Raikage closed in, Nakime slipped Kokushibo away to another location. Whoosh! With a spatial displacement, Asuma and Might Guy, who had been regrouping, were abruptly sent to an unfamiliar long street. Damn it! Asuma pushed himself up from the ground, irritation on his face. Might Guy scratched his head. What's going on here? It's space-time ninjutsu, Asuma said gravely. The Akatsuki has a top-tier space-time specialist. Space-time ninjutsu was the most advanced, rarest kind of ninjutsu in the shinobi world. Those who mastered it were without exception elite. A figure stepped out of a narrow alley nearby. Asuma and Might Guy regarded the newcomer warily and recognized Kitsuchi, badly injured. Kitsuchi sighed in relief when he saw them. Alive people, thank goodness. This place is cursed. What happened to you? Asuma asked. Kitsuchi shook his head and told them of his encounter with Kokushibo, the brutal fight and his battered escape. Is he that strong? Asuma asked. I think he might be a samurai from the Land of Iron, a top swordmaster, Kitsuchi said. He's using some technique to push his speed to extremes, not unlike the fourth Raikage. Might Guy murmured, that speed, paired with master swordsmanship, reminds me of a senior. Asuma understood who Might Guy meant and nodded, then surveyed the area. No wonder the Akatsuki set a trap. They had a trump card hidden. Kitsuchi urged, we should meet up with the others. The longer we stay apart, the more danger we're in. If we gather, we stand a chance. They agreed. The Akatsuki still had many S-rank criminals. The United Forces' best hope was to unite. Then calm footsteps echoed from down the long street. The three looked up and saw the approaching figure, the Akatsuki member whose eyes bore the mark Upper Moon 2. This is bad, Kitsuchi thought. He had used everything to escape, and now the enemy had closed the distance already. Asuma fired a flare into the sky and said to Might Guy, we'll hold him here and buy time for reinforcements. The flare shot up with a high, shrill whistle and then vanished. It detonated far away. Asuma's face went ashen. Someone with space-time jutsu had moved the flare. In the distance, Kitsuchi's own flare went off silently inside a building. He had fired earlier, and it had been displaced into a structure. The enemy could have made both flares explode quietly, but they had deliberately sent Asuma's flare to another place to lure reinforcements away. He moved the flare to draw others in. Asuma snarled at Kokushibo. He wants to finish us here. Split up and run, Kitsuchi said decisively. Every survivor counts. Asuma nodded, but Might Guy had a different idea. If the flare is meant to gather reinforcements, then that's where we should go. You don't know his speed, Kitsuchi began, but Might Guy cut him off with a shout. 8 gates, open. A blast of air burst from Might Guy as he began opening gates. First gate, gate of opening, open. Second gate, gate of healing, open. Sixth gate, gate of view, open. In just a few breaths, he swung open 6 gates. Chakra poured off him, mixed with evaporating sweat, forming that familiar green aura. Kitsuchi's eyes widened. He had never expected such terrifying chakra from a seemingly ordinary Konoha shinobi. Asuma was stunned. He had only recently returned to the village and hadn't kept up with Might Guy. He'd known Guy was no longer the Academy's dead last joke, but he hadn't realized how much Guy had improved. Might Guy didn't waste time. Grabbing Asuma and Kitsuchi, one in each arm, he slammed his foot into the ground and shot forward like a cannon toward the distant flare's explosion. Kokushibo stood on the long street watching them go. Whoosh, whoosh, they flew, buildings blurring past, wind roaring in their ears. With a final impact, Might Guy set them down. Asuma and Kitsuchi reeled, dizzy and unsteady. Kitsuchi began. As Konoha's 8 gates, Asuma said, once you open to the 5th gate, the gate of limit, you can step on air. Kitsuchi's expression sobered. He realized their apparent flight had been an illusion created by Might Guy's speed and the ability to momentarily run on air. His feet had been running so fast they effectively ran above the ground. He added, I remember now. You're Konoha's Azure Beast, the son of the man who once defeated the 7 ninja swordsmen of the Mist alone. Might Guy only smiled and closed the gates. Moments later, Chiyo, Kakashi, Yuhi, C, and Killer Bee arrived. After everyone gathered, they exchanged what they knew, Kokushibo's apparent immortality and his habit of devouring flesh and blood to replenish chakra, his blinding speed and masterful swordsmanship. They also worked to map and understand the infinite castle. Kakashi said, I've been scouting and mapping the streets. This city is vast, but it's not truly infinite. C, a sensory ninja, added, I've mapped part of it too. Whenever I approach a certain area, I'm forcibly shifted elsewhere. So that area must be the edge of the city, Kitsuchi concluded. That's what it sounds like, C agreed. Zabuza, badly injured, arrived shortly after and contributed a key observation. His eyes are different. He seemed to see through my hidden mist assassination jutsu. Zabuza guessed Kokushibo had some ocular keke genkai, but that wasn't accurate. Kokushibo's ability came from the breathing method. At a certain pinnacle, swordsmen enter what's called the transparent world. Beyond mere eye power, the transparent world grants enormous boosts to speed and strength, lets a swordsman predict opponents' movements, and even perceive veins and blood flow under the skin. In many ways, it's a martial state, more effective than the Byakugan. The most urgent task is finding a way out, Zabuza said. Chiyo's voice was cold. This large-scale space-time jutsu must consume a vast amount of chakra. Even if we can't find an exit quickly, the enemy shouldn't be able to maintain the trap forever. Kakashi shook his head. No, the enemy is killing people to replenish itself. The longer this drags on, the more we lose strength. And remember, only 2 Akatsuki members have revealed themselves so far. What do we do? Asuma asked. Kakashi considered, then said, we start with the Akatsuki member controlling the city. Killer Bee spoke up. I have a feeling the one controlling this place is hiding inside it. How do we find them in such a huge city? Kitsuchi asked. Killer Bee looked at Kakashi and C. Can you confirm this city has boundaries and can be damaged? Based on what we've learned, the enemy can only shift space within the city. Areas that are destroyed don't instantly repair, Kakashi said. There must be boundaries. Then I'll break through, Killer Bee said, and with that he began his tailed beast transformation. The 8 tails erupted around him. Thick tentacles unfurled and swelled until Killer Bee was completely unleashed. The sight of the fully released tailed beast filled the gathered ninja with mixed emotions. Zabuza eyed the chakra warily. His chakra, even stronger than the 4th Raikage's. Kumogakure isn't simple. Kitsuchi's face grew grim. Is he a perfect Jinchuriki? Iwagakure had its own tailed beasts, but they'd never managed to release them fully. The sight of a completely freed tailed beast like Killer Bee stirred both caution and envy in those who had seen Jinchuriki only in partial form. Killer Bee gathered chakra in the 8 tails' huge maw at visible speed. The chakra compressed into a spinning tailed beast ball. With a thunderous shriek, it hurtled low across the ground, gouging a deep furrow and leveling streets and buildings in its path. Outside the Infinite Castle, Yugito Ni watched through her vision and learned of the United Forces' plight. It was Kokushibo working with Nakime. She felt some relief. She had led the strongest, largest unit to this anchor point. If other units had run into this pair alone, the losses would have been unimaginable. Despite Kokushibo and Nakime's danger, the United Forces had powerful shinobi like the 4th Raikai, Killer Bee, and Jiraiya, and many seasoned warriors. If they could overcome the initial shock, they could still prevail. Then Yugito saw a group of figures rapidly closing. They caught up too fast. She cut the link with Naruto, who lay unconscious, and with a flash she disappeared from sight. Chapter 189. Take a day off. I woke up with my stomach in knots and an overwhelming sense of discomfort. I can't focus on anything right now, so I'm taking the day off to rest and recover. Sorry for the inconvenience. I'll be back as soon as I'm feeling better. Chapter 190. Timing is everything. Shinji sprinted, Yugito Ni, trapped in his genjutsu, always at the forefront of his mind. With his current dojutsu, the range of Jibi was only 100 kilometers. Under normal circumstances, that would be more than enough. But the 5 anchor points were scattered across the ninja world, some separated by straight-line distances of tens of thousands of kilometers. Against such vast distances, a 100-kilometer range felt woefully inadequate. Beyond that limit, Shinji would lose remote control over Yugito, who was still under his genjutsu. Right now, with the fate of the ninja world hanging in the balance, he didn't care whether Yugito Ni ended up in the hands of the Akatsuki or rescued by Kumogakure. What mattered was destroying the anchor point hidden in the primeval forest of the Land of Fire. The United Forces were currently tied down by Kokushibo and Naobi. They couldn't escape to interfere. That meant Yugito, if he could force her into a full-tailed beast transformation, was his only option to obliterate that anchor point from a distance before Jibi's range ran out. If I get too close to that cave, will I fall into Naobi's infinite castle? He wondered, not fully understanding the mechanics of the infinite castle. Because Yugito was his last resort for this anchor, Shinji decided to risk everything and push her into a tailed beast state, then have her fire a tailed beast ball to wipe the anchor point clean. He activated Jibi and issued the command for transformation. In the primeval forest, Yugito Ni was perched on a large branch. The 3 Tomoe Sharingan pattern in her eyes began to spin, then fuse, reforming into the pattern of Shinji's eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. Shinji amplified the dojutsu through Jibi to tighten his control. He needed to hold her together long enough for her to unleash the attack. Yugito adjusted her stance like a cat, leapt down, and the two tails' chakra began to surge outward. Her body swelled as denser, corrosive chakra pushed against her skin. The transformation was painful and violent, far more brutal than Killer Bee's controlled shifts. In a conscious state, a full-tailed beast transformation was already a heavy burden for Yugito. Now, with her conscious and the two tails subconscious caught in Shinji's genjutsu, the process was teetering on the edge of a complete breakdown. Shinji's expression darkened. He couldn't afford hesitation. He poured more of his dojutsu through Jibi to suppress the rising frenzy and simultaneously ordered Yugito to prepare a full power strike aimed at the cave. Because once she went berserk, she would become unreachable even to his remote control. The eternal Mangekyo Sharingan exerted a tremendous suppressive force over tailed beasts, but only if his link held. So he kept reinforcing it and pushed her to condense a tailed beast ball. Low roars vibrated from Yugito as concentrated chakra gathered at the edge of her maw, compressed into a luminous sphere. A perfect tailed beast ball took time to form. Though the ball had already taken shape, Shinji's control forced the condensation process onward. As the sphere grew, the chakra on Yugito's body writhed, desperate to break free. If this had been earlier, Kokushibo and Naobi, who guarded the anchor point, would have noticed the surge and intervened. But Shinji had baited the united forces into the infinite castle, keeping those two occupied. They couldn't just abandon their battle to check the forest, no matter what they sensed. Time, however, was against them. Tsunade and the other reinforcements were pressing fast on Shinji's heels. He could feel the distance between himself and Yugito closing in on Jibi's limit. The closer he ran, the more likely he was to lose the link, and Yugito was moments from slipping into uncontrolled madness. He had to act now. "Fire," he commanded through the link. With a piercing scream, the fully condensed tailed beast ball shot forward in a blinding flash. It tore through trees and rock, swallowing everything in its wake. The shockwave overturned swathes of forest. Dust and debris churned like a sandstorm. When the smoke finally began to clear, the ground was a crater dozens of meters deep. Shinji seized the last seconds of control and pushed Yugito toward the cave. At the center of the tailed beast ball's trajectory, where Kokushibo had been hiding, nothing remained. The cave itself had been erased as if wiped clean. Successfully severed an anchor point. Warning, plane destruction countdown reevaluation initiated. Countdown, 5 days. A series of notification chimes sounded in Shinji's ears. He exhaled, the taut knot of tension loosening slightly. The anchor point had been severed. The method worked. Physically destroying the area containing an anchor point would sever it. More importantly, each severed anchor point seemed to delay the imminent catastrophe. Before this strike, the countdown had shown 4 days. Now it read 5. Hope flooded him. If every anchor point could be severed, each would buy them more time. Time, nothing else, was the one thing that mattered now. Shinji glanced back and saw Tsunade's team closing in fast. So speedy. He let out a soft chuckle and looked away. His whole point in abducting Naruto had been to draw out Konoha's best pursuers, so he hadn't bothered to conceal his trail. Tsunade's rapid pursuit, however, was more than he'd expected and complicated his plan. Still, it was proof of the village's concern for Naruto, and that pleased him. A twinge of regret flitted through him. Earlier, his distance from Yugito Ni had exceeded the tailed beast's effective range, so at the last second, he'd only managed to order the rampaging Yugito to head for another anchor point. Given how she'd been acting, Shinji wasn't sure she'd obey. They were 100 kilometers apart, and she was fully transformed into a tailed beast with massive chakra. Even with his eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, he couldn't guarantee full control. Losing one anchor point was a cost he had to accept. That particular anchor point, however, had been defended by Kokushibo and Nakime. In the original 12 Kazuki, that pairing was among the very strongest next to the Demon King. If not for the combined forces he'd employed, Shinji himself might not have been able to deal with them. The other 4 anchor points shouldn't be so heavily guarded, he thought. He ran through the possibilities. In the Demon Slayer world, the strongest individual should logically be the Lantern Bearer, then the Demon King, Muzan Kutsuji. But Shinji had met Muzan before. By then, Muzan had already fallen from Demon King status and become Lower Moon 1 among the 12 Kazuki. That suggested the Lantern Bearer had likely seized the Demon King's former power. In short, the Lantern Bearer and the new Demon King could very well be the same person. The Upper Moon 2 characters Yugito had glimpsed in Kokushibo's eyes implied Kokushibo ranked third in that world. Above him were only Upper Moon 1 and the Demon King. Still, the Demon Slayer world's power fundamentally came from the swordsman's breathing techniques and the demon's blood demon arts, both of which had limits. Without absorbing chakra from the ninja world, even a Demon King would at best be a little stronger than a Kage-level shinobi. That meant demons like Nikime, whose blood demon art altered space itself, posed the real threat. With Kokushibo and Nikime tied up at that single anchor point in the Land of Fire, the defenses at the other four, water, earth, wind, and lightning, were comparatively light. The only one that might be troublesome was the anchor point personally guarded by the Demon Slayer world's Lantern Bearer. The rest were unlikely to be stronger than the Kokushibo-Nikime combination. Spatial blood demon arts were rare even among Upper Moon demons. Which of the remaining four anchor points would the Lantern Bearer be guarding? Shinji narrowed his eyes, considering. His own Lantern Bearer level was low and his experience limited. He had little way to judge how powerful a typical Lantern Bearer could become. Some Lantern Bearers could travel between worlds through rifts for trade or plunder. The Lantern Bearer who had taken the ninja world and set up anchor points without anyone noticing had to be experienced. The opponent's strength might exceed the Demon Slayer world's usual limits, possibly greater than the Demon King himself. Translated to ninja world terms, that could mean a Kage-level fighter, or even a peak Kage, like the first Hokage or Madara at the Valley of the End. If so, Shinji had to avoid an early confrontation and save such an opponent for last, when he could concentrate all his forces to eliminate them. A whooshing sound snapped him back to the present. His heart tightened and he turned his head, only to catch Tsunade coming at him at speed, her fist aimed directly at him. He hadn't expected her to seize his momentary distraction and suddenly accelerate. Before he could react, she struck. The impact sent him flying. He crashed through several large trees before coming to a stop. A sharp cracking sound followed. A long fissure had appeared across the Susanoo, shielding him. Not bad, he thought. He hadn't even had time to fully turn before he'd activated Susanoo. Good thing he'd been cautious, or he might already have been badly wounded. Tsunade's team arrived with muted whooshes, landing around Shinji and tightening the circle. Sasuke barked impatiently, "Put Naruto down now!" Shinji, still wrapped in Susanoo, ignored Sasuke and looked at Tsunade. "Tsunade, one of the Konoha Sannin. Hand over Naruto and we'll let you go," Tsunade said coldly. Seeing his Susanoo brought up a host of unpleasant memories. She didn't want to fight a Manjikyo Sharingan user to the death unless forced. "Let me go? Say that when you can actually stop me," Shinji replied, amusement in his voice. He swung the Susanoo's massive arms. The ground shook as trees and rocks were overturned by the Colossus's movements. None of them were willing to clash head-on with Susanoo, so they chose to evade for the moment. Taking advantage of the distraction, Shinji deactivated Susanoo, activated his breathing technique, and hidden by smoke and flying debris, grabbed Naruto and bolted once more, heading for another anchor point in the desert of the Land of Wind. Chapter 192. Yanzu. Because Tsunade and the others were wary of Shinji's Mangekyo Sharingan, they didn't dare to press the pursuit too hard. With the enhancement from his breathing method, Shinji quickly shook off the trailing forces. He rode hard until he reached the border of the Land of Fire. By then the sky had brightened and the sun was high, bathing everything in brilliant light. Naruto, who had been carried by Shinji the whole way, woke up. He rubbed his eyes groggily, then snapped to attention and shouted, "You bastard, put me down!" Shinji glanced at him and said, "Shut up." At the sound of Shinji's voice, Naruto froze as if electrocuted. He was not a fully awakened Jinchuriki. Kurama was still sealed in his spirit, so a simple genjutsu from Shinji could temporarily restrain him. Behind them, the pursuers were closing in again. Sasuke called from a distance. Coward, how long are you going to run? Shinji looked back. I know you're anxious. Don't be. Sasuke fell silent, his face flushing. Shikaku, standing beside Lady Tsunade, murmured, Lady Tsunade, he seems to be trying to lead us somewhere. Shizune replied quickly, if we follow him further, we'll leave the country. Where is he trying to escape to? This is the direction of the land of wind, Tsunade said after a pause, frowning. If his target is the Nine Tails inside Naruto, his best move would be to break contact and run, not lead us straight to his hiding place. Could it be a trap? Shizune asked nervously. Shikaku shook his head. There are plenty of places to set traps along the way. There's no need to stretch this out. This unit led by Tsunade was only the vanguard against members of the Akatsuki. The third Hokage had already organized follow-up reinforcements, so if they remained in contact, the village would be able to send more troops. Shinji knew that well. With the nearest anchor points in the Land of Fire cut off and the remaining 4 scattered far apart, a failed operation would make it hard to mount a second wave. He wanted to resolve the anchor points in the Land of Wind quickly by himself, then use his mobility, he could fly, to scout and coordinate the overall situation. Between the chase and the escape, both sides left the Land of Fire and crossed the small river country that lies between the Land of Fire and the Land of Wind. Like other minor nations, the Land of Rain, the Grass Country, the Land of Hot Water, these buffer states are narrow and long, so crossing them didn't take long. When Shinji plunged into the Land of Wind's desert, Tsunade urged her team onward and told Shikaku, mark our trail so reinforcements can catch up quickly. Understood, Shikaku replied. After a moment, Tsunade added, also, send word to Sunagakure and ask them to send aid. Shikaku nodded. Shinji ignored the shouts behind him and checked the lamp prompt for direction while trying to contact allies with Jibi. But in the remote Land of Wind, he couldn't reach Karin, Haku, Neji, or Yugito Ni. Deidara remained unreachable, as he had been all along. After another day of hard riding, Shinji finally reached the desert near the anchor point. Exhausted from nearly a day and night of frantic movement, he stopped about 2 kilometers away instead of rushing in. He ate his rations and thought. An hour earlier, he had turned back and attacked Tsunade's team to buy time, which had temporarily shaken them off. But Tsunade's force included Hyuga and Aburame clan members. They would catch up within at most 15 minutes. The best option, he decided, was to bypass the anchor point area and let Tsunade and her team probe it. He was confident. He possessed the only pair of eternal Mangekyo Sharingan in the ninja world, but the burden weighed on him. If he failed, the future of the ninja world could be at stake. Fortunately, he'd come in a fairly straight line. If he detoured around the anchor point, Tsunade's team would likely go straight into the area and draw out the guards. He could then gauge their strength and move in when they were engaged. Besides, Tsunade was a top medic, and her team had Byakugan, the parasitic insect technique, and the old Ino Shikacho formation, enough to deal with most anchor points. Having decided, Shinji skirted the anchor point and woke Naruto from a distance. Naruto sprang up and swung a punch at him. Surprised by Naruto's quick reaction, Shinji barely caught the blow. Naruto nearly ripped the mask from his face. Grabbing Naruto's fist, Shinji said, as expected of the most unpredictable ninja, "Look behind you." Naruto suddenly yelled and rammed his head into Shinji with a violent headbutt. Shinji smiled at Naruto's quickness, sidestepped the headbutt, then kicked Naruto away. He stepped closer and said, "That Uchiha Sasuke of yours used to shout like you too." Naruto struggled to his feet. "What did you do to Sasuke?" Shinji answered coldly. "Of course I killed him." "What?" Naruto froze, then his eyes reddened. "You liar! I'll kill you!" A fierce orange-red chakra burst from Naruto. One tail had already manifested. Nearby, Tsunade sensed the Nine Tails chakra, and her expression went pale. She spurred her team and crashed into the anchor point area. When Tsunade's unit closed within 100 meters, hundreds of dark figures erupted from the desert and surged toward them. At the same time, a violent wind picked up the sand, whipping a towering sandstorm into the sky that blotted out the sun. In an instant, the day dimmed as if night had fallen. "It's a trap! Be careful!" Tsunade shouted, but her voice was swallowed by the howling storm. Her team, all elites, were already ready for battle. When the black shapes rushed through the dust, they didn't panic. They struck back. Shinji frowned at the sudden sandstorm and murmured, "So that's it." He had deliberately arrived during the day, hoping the sun would weaken any demons guarding the anchor point. The enemy, however, had countered, a wind-controlling blood demon art lifting the yellow sand to form a sunshade and block the sunlight over the anchor point. Brilliant, and tailored to the desert terrain. Naruto, swelled with Ninetales chakra, lunged at Shinji with a tail snapping. Shinji barely glanced at him. One heartbeat later, Naruto sagged to the ground, eyes blank, as if drugged. Shinji stepped over the unconscious Naruto and headed toward the anchor point area. Thanks to the lamp prompt, he could pinpoint the anchor point's location. From inside the storm, he could vaguely hear fighting. Suddenly, Sasuke burst through the dust, wounded and terrified. A burned demon with a gaping maw lunged at him. Sasuke, inexperienced against demons, was pushed to the brink. Shinji flickered into view with a body flicker technique, kicked the demon away, and saved Sasuke. The Uchiha breathed a shaky sigh of relief, and then saw Shinji's red cloud cloak and froze in shock. Shinji muttered, irritated, "What kind of village brings Sasuke out here? This is just reckless." He glanced at Sasuke. "If you don't want to die, stay close to me." Sasuke hesitated, but then chased after him. Shinji refocused on the lamp prompt. The anchor point was only a dozen meters away. He narrowed his eyes and scanned the sand, thinking the anchor point might be buried from the prior remote destruction by Yugito Ni's tailed beast ball. He considered whether to summon Susanoo to dig down. Before he could act, a roar tore through the storm. A flash of fire raced toward them and collided with such force that it knocked Shinji and Sasuke out of the sandstorm, sent flying hundreds of meters, and spit them out into the open. The impact felt like being struck by a train. Shinji barely managed to manifest Susanoo for protection. When the fiery light cleared, Shinji saw the source. Not a jutsu or a blood demon art, but a cloaked swordsman wreathed in flame. His eyes narrowed. Kyojuro Rengoku. Shinji had never expected a Demon Slayer Corps swordsman to be guarding this anchor point. And of all people, Kyojuro Rengoku, the flame Hashira, famed for his righteous and fiery spirit. Sasuke, still dazed from the blow, was furious and shocked. He hadn't sensed the swordsman and had been knocked flat before he could react. He clutched his head, glaring at the man who had single-handedly interrupted their plan. Chapter 93. Don't be afraid of the sun. Shinji, who possessed the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, saw the deep reluctance in Sasuke's eyes, but right then he had little patience to focus on Sasuke. He muttered under his breath, frowning, "Kyojuro Rengoku, how could it be him?" From what he had pieced together, the lantern-bearer in the Demon Slayer world had taken on the Demon King's power. That would mean the Demon Slayer Corps had very likely been wiped out. The 12 Kizuki alone had been stronger than the Corps in the original timeline. Adding the Demon King's strength would have made the Corps' chances negligible. So seeing Kyojuro Rengoku standing before him, Nichiren drawn and expression grave, took him aback. This isn't right. Shinji's face turned grave. At first, because Kyojuro showed no thirst for blood, and Shinji knew his character, he had unconsciously sized him up as a swordsman, not a monster. But as he studied the man more closely, he realized the truth. Kyojuro had become a demon. Worse, he was standing directly under the sun. Kyojuro held his long Nichiren horizontally and sighed, "I'm sorry, I must stop you." Sasuke snapped, "Who are you people? Why are you attacking us?" Kyojuro looked at him and repeated softly, "I'm sorry." Sasuke froze for a beat. His perceptiveness was far beyond that of a normal shinobi. Whether because of his dojutsu bloodline or his identity as Indra Otsutsuki's reincarnation, he could sense intent clearly when his emotions weren't clouded. That was why, in the sandstorm earlier, he had hesitated only briefly before following Shinji. He could feel Shinji meant him no real harm. Now he could tell the orange-haired swordsman truly regretted what he had to do. Shinji replied coldly, "An apology doesn't change anything." Kyojuro opened his mouth, then shut it. Shinji understood at once. The lantern-bearer hadn't just merged the demon's power into Kyojuro, but the Demon Slayer Corps mission as well. The Corps knew the Demon Slayer world had invaded the ninja world. At least the Flame Hashira before him did, which was why he spoke with remorse. "Stand aside, this isn't your fight," Shinji ordered Sasuke. fixing his gaze on Kyojuro. This would not be a sparring match or a matter of valor. Kyojuro had become a demon to save his world. Shinji would fight to save his. Their goals were mutually exclusive. Words were useless. Sasuke bristled, then reluctantly stepped back. Kyojuro didn't try to stop him. Once Sasuke had retreated, Kyojuro lifted his blade. "Take care," he warned. Shinji snorted. Fifth form, Flame Tiger. Kyojuro's cry was soft, and suddenly a torrent of flame burst from him. The fire wrapped around him and resolved into a giant blazing tiger that lunged at Shinji. Shinji's eyes narrowed. He manifested his full Susanoo to meet it. The collision was thunderous. The shockwave ripped through the sand, whipping up a new storm that swept Sasuke off his feet and hurled him to the ground. He coughed and spat sand from his mouth, then stared toward the center of the field, stunned. In his mind, the Akatsuki member codenamed A, who wielded a pair of Mangekyo Sharingan, should have been at the very top of the ninja world. No one should be able to match him one-on-one. Yet here was a samurai-like stranger with a long Nichiren who could contend with A, and unexpectedly, he wasn't losing. What was that? Taijutsu? Ninjutsu? He hadn't seen any hand seals. A flood of questions surged through Sasuke as his three Tomoe Sharingan whirled, trying to make sense of the clash. At the center, Shinji staggered back over 10 meters from the impact, expression unreadable as he analyzed rapidly. That last attack wasn't a mere breathing-style technique. It was a blood demon art, augmented with chakra. Breathing techniques can imitate elemental states, water, flame, lightning, even moonlight or sunlight, yet they don't actually produce elements. Only at the very limit could they mimic elemental strikes. But Kyojuro's Flame Tiger had been a tangible beast of fire. Without Susanoo, Shinji could not have blocked it. Kyojuro, though pushed back as well, showed no astonishment, only a measured respect for Susanoo's power. He breathed out, and in a blur of flame, he vanished from his previous position. Shinji's expression tightened. He had seen the markings on Kyojuro's face, and knew that in this timeline, the Flame Hashira had activated his markings, reaching the limit of flame breathing and the transparent world. That explained his blinding speed. As a demon, freed from human frailty, Kyojuro could fully display his swordsmanship. But one thing Shinji could not explain: why Kyojuro, now a demon, stood under sunlight unburned. From the demon's behavior, attacking Tsunade's team by raising sand to block sunlight, Shinji had concluded demons feared the sun. Only one demon in the original timeline was immune to sunlight, Nezuko, because her bloodline carried sun breathing. Flame breathing derived from sun breathing, and since Kyojuro had perfected flame breathing, perhaps he had some sun resilience. Shinji also smelled no human blood on him, suggesting Kyojuro hadn't been feeding. The lantern bearer must have infused him with power some other way. All of that tightened Shinji's frown. A Hashira-level genius, now a demon and immune to sunlight. He was no longer constrained by human limits or demon weaknesses. Defeating him would be far harder. Another barrage of fire slammed into the towering golden Susanoo, flashing like fireworks. Only Sasuke, close enough to see the deadly intent behind them, realized how lethal those bursts were. Susanoo could handle it, but the speed and force felt overwhelming. Shinji attempted to counterattack, but his Susanoo's movements lagged behind Kyojuro's. The blows looked planet-shattering, and yet failed to land decisive hits. Another strike hit. The sound of cracking came from Shinji's ear. He glanced up and saw a long fissure forming along the side of his Susanoo. Susanoo's been breached? Sasuke's face went pale. In his view, Susanoo, an ability born of the Mangekyo Sharingan, was absolute. Yet this swordsman, wielding only a Nichiren, had cracked it. A crack meant the defense was no longer perfect. More cracks echoed as Kyojuro kept up a relentless, deceptive assault, dazzling flashes that hid the repeated strikes struck at the same point until the armor finally failed. The fissures intersected, then a chunk of the golden shell shattered away, leaving a gap. Shinji stared at the opening, panic evident. In a blaze, Kyojuro surged through the gap and into the interior of Susanoo itself. He appeared before Shinji, blade poised, face empty of triumph or sorrow. Sasuke couldn't find his voice. He had never imagined A could be bested by such a seemingly ordinary swordsman, nor that a Nichiren could pierce Susanoo. It shattered everything he believed, and his pride as an Uchiha. Beneath the shattering armor, Shinji smiled faintly and said to Kyojuro as the blade fell, "A Nichiren like yours cannot kill me." Chapter 194. I still like your rebellious look. Your blade cannot kill me. Flames rushed in, searing hot, but Shinji neither dodged nor flinched. Even his earlier panic vanished. Kyojuro Rengoku's face stayed calm. He didn't hesitate at all. He brought his blade down decisively. No, Sasuke instinctively shut his eyes, unable to watch an Uchiha wielding the Mangekyo be cut in two by an orange-haired samurai. Swish! Kyojuro's sword sliced through the figure before him, cutting from the left shoulder to the right waist and cleaving the body in half. Bang! The severed form turned into a puff of white smoke and vanished. It wasn't Shinji's true body at all. It was only a shadow clone. Kyojuro blinked, then raised his blade and scanned the surroundings warily. He noticed, to his surprise, that the breach he'd made in the Susanoo was already sealing itself. The half-formed Susanoo's outstretched arms plunged into the yellow sand, closing the opening beneath. What had been a Susanoo protecting Shinji had instantly become a prison trapping Kyojuro. Clearly, Kyojuro had fallen into a trap. Shinji wouldn't have sent his true body into the sandstorm. With the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, activating Susanoo through a shadow clone was trivial. He'd used the clone to probe Kyojuro's strength. Once he realized that the Flame Hashira's speed and sun immunity made him hard to kill conventionally, Shinji had switched tactics toward entrapment. He noticed that Kyojuro's slashes could damage the half-body Susanoo, a significant insight. Even a half-formed Susanoo has terrifying defense. Only exceptional powers like Tsunade's Might Fist, the Raikage's Lightning Release Chakra Mode, or Danzo's combined wind techniques could dent it. So Shinji feigned fear and let Kyojuro slash at the Susanoo, baiting him to cut inside the construct. If Kyojuro was trapped within it, his speed meant nothing, and Shinji could control the fight. Kyojuro didn't know that as long as Shinji's dojutsu reserves were sufficient, he could restore Susanoo at will, or even bring forth a perfect Susanoo. Escape would be impossible. The tide of battle turned in an instant. From a distance, Sasuke watched, stunned. Shinji's maneuver was simple and brilliant, a trap built on Kyojuro's ignorance of the Mangekyo Sharingan. As an Uchiha, Sasuke recognized the stratagem immediately. He had never seen Susanoo used in precisely this way and couldn't help thinking, his mastery of the Mangekyo must be superior to that other person's. Inside the arena, trapped but unperturbed, Kyojuro still wore that expression, neither sorrowful nor joyful. Then Shinji's true body flashed up from the yellow sand nearby. He didn't waste words. He aimed straight for the Susanoo encasing Kyojuro and activated his eye technique, Amaterasu. In an instant, black flames descended toward Kyojuro. He barely evaded them, moving with a hair's breadth to spare, but when the Amaterasu struck the ground and ignited the sand, spreading black fire rapidly, surprise finally flickered across his composed face. Shinji closed the distance slowly. The interior of the Susanoo was cramped. Kyojuro could only dodge as the black flames crept closer, pressed into a corner. Shinji stopped, looking through the Susanoo at the Flame Hashira, and said coldly, "Your sword carries no killing intent. Let me give you release." Under Shinji's mask, the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan gleamed. As he activated his dojutsu fully, the black flames within the Susanoo erupted, filling the space and engulfing Kyojuro. Amaterasu's black fire charred Kyojuro's body at once. He might resist sunlight, but he couldn't withstand the relentless burning of Amaterasu. The flames ate at him, and his form began to blacken and disintegrate until, little by little, he turned to ash. Through it all, Kyojuro's face showed no panic, just that same steady calm, as if, exactly as Shinji had said, he was waiting for release. Shinji then dispelled both Susanoo and Amaterasu at once. Using Susanoo as a furnace and burning an enemy inside it with Amaterasu was beyond the reach of most Mangekyo users. Amaterasu ignites and cannot be told friend from foe. Only by mastering Kagutsuchi can its black flames be shaped and controlled. Shinji had done just that, wielded both Amaterasu and Kagutsuchi in tandem. He'd also risked scorching his own Susanoo in the process, but because he possessed the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, he could endure it. Sasuke hurried into the arena and stared at the ashes scattered across the yellow sand. Such a powerful person, just turned to ash like that? Shinji glanced at him. Otherwise? Sasuke instinctively took a step back, bowing his head in respect. You, Shinji laughed suddenly. I still prefer your arrogant, rebellious look. Chapter 195, Break One More Place. Shinji's offhand joke sounded unusually sharp in Sasuke's ears. He flushed and shot back. One day I'll surpass you. My Sharingan will awaken into Mangekyo Sharingan. Oh, I'll look forward to that. Shinji's reply was casual. He turned his attention to the blackened ashes of Kyojuro Rengoku, about to be scattered by the raging sandstorm. His earlier words hadn't been made on a whim. During their fight, even though Kyojuro had appeared to give everything he had, Shinji had sensed no real killing intent behind the repeated sword swings. The flame Hashira had been conflicted. Saving his own world was an irreplaceable duty, but the idea that doing so might doom another world would torment a man like him. Shinji felt that anguish. He even suspected that Kyojuro might have walked into a trap on purpose, or at least sensed the trap and accepted it. From the way Kyojuro dodged Susanu's attacks, Shinji suspected the man had some variant of the transparent world technique, an eye-based ability akin to the Byakugan. It was possible Kyojuro had found Shinji's true body hidden under the yellow sand long ago. None of it mattered anymore. Shinji was glad he didn't have to wrestle with that kind of moral conflict. His sole responsibility was to protect his world. Any invader, whether willingly aggressive or compelled, deserved only one response: elimination. The doubts stirred by Kyojuro's struggle faded like his ashes in the wind. He ignored Sasuke and flashed over to the anchor point's location. Staring at the yellow sand beneath his feet, he murmured, "Is this it?" The sandstorm roared in his ears, and faint sounds of battle drifted through it. Tsunade's team and the demons that had ambushed them were still fighting tenaciously. But Shinji scarcely registered that. All his attention was on the ground below. He tightened his focus and summoned the golden Susanoo. Then, in the most basic application of his power, Susanoo began digging into the yellow sand. If other Mangekyo Sharingan users could see him using Susanoo as an excavator, they would have spat blood. Susanoo was generally considered a last resort, a trump card even for someone like Uchiha Itachi. Still, under the armored spirit's brute force, Shinji soon uncovered 5 stone slabs buried deep in the sand. What is this? They were plain stone slabs, nothing like the grand name anchor points suggested. Had he not dug them up himself, he might have written them off as ordinary building stones. No time to argue. Let's try destroying them. Time was short. He directed Susanoo to strike. Boom! The armored fist smashed into the 5 slabs, shattering them into fragments. One anchor point successfully severed. Warning, plane destruction countdown reevaluation initiated. The lantern bearer's prompt sounded in Shinji's ear, and his anxious heart eased. So these slabs were the anchor points. He had expected something more exotic. A new worry surfaced. Shinji had assumed the lantern bearer's invasion from the Demon Slayer world was an act of suicidal revenge, dragging the ninja world down with it. But his fight with Kyojuro had sown doubt. A man with Kyojuro's personality would never join an invasion intending only mutual annihilation. If the lantern bearer had set up these anchor points in the ninja world, perhaps he didn't truly intend to perish with it. There must be another angle Shinji didn't yet see. He probably still wants to survive, Shinji thought. Everything he's doing is ultimately for preservation. But why use anchor points to draw the Demon Slayer world closer to the ninja world? What exactly is he planning? Before he could puzzle it out, a chorus of piercing demonic screams cut through the sandstorm. The demons scattered through the storm seemed to sense that an anchor point had been destroyed. From all directions they converged on Shinji, eyes wild with rage. "You're asking for death," Shinji said coldly. Amaterasu's black flames sprang to life, whipping around him with the sand into a ring of burning darkness. The demons, arrogant in their immortal bodies, tried to surge through the fireband and were engulfed. They howled as the inextinguishable black flames consumed them. Tsunade's party, still caught in the storm, sensed the change. Shikaku, exhausted from the fight, shouted to Tsunade, "It looks like something drew those monsters away." Tsunade glanced toward Shinji with a grave expression, then saw the sky streaked with black fire and demons writhing inside it. "Amaterasu!" she cried, and barked orders. "Get out of here! Everyone, whatever you do, don't touch those flames." Her team didn't hesitate. One by one, they followed Tsunade out of the sandstorm, retreating to a safe distance to watch. As the sandstorm was devoured by the black flames, everyone felt equal parts astonishment and unease. Wind usually hinders ordinary fire. If it grows too strong, it can smother flames. Amaterasu was different. It could not be extinguished, and the wind only helped it spread faster. Second update. Please send recommendation tickets and monthly passes. It's a small favor, everyone. Chapter 196. Which side should we support? The massive sandstorm, set ablaze by the black flames of Amaterasu, raged like a natural disaster. It wasn't just ordinary villagers who were stunned. Lady Tsunade herself felt the ground shift beneath her. Moments later, when the creature that had stirred up the sand died within it, the sky-shattering tempest finally began to subside. Tsunade led her team forward and found the battlefield littered with black flames and yellow sand, the two smeared together into ash-dark grains. "These black flames will have to be sealed," she said. After instructing her team, Tsunade knelt and examined the ash carefully. She pinched a handful, and the black residue dissipated between her fingers as if it had never been there. She frowned. What had she just seen? With her mastery of medical ninjutsu, she could tell these enemies were not ordinary shinobi. Their bodies seemed almost immortal. Taijutsu, tools, even ninjutsu could not deliver a killing blow. Tearing a body apart hadn't stopped them. Before she could sort it out, a Hyuga Jonin shouted, "It's Uchiha Sasuke! He brought Naruto back!" All eyes turned to the figure emerging from the dying storm. It was Sasuke, and on his back was the unconscious form of Naruto, the target of their rescue mission. Tsunade hurried forward. "Are you all right?" Sasuke set Naruto gently on the ground. "Examine him," he said. Tsunade checked Naruto and let out a quiet breath. "He's fine. He was caught in a genjutsu and is unconscious, but he's not physically injured." Other team members crowded around. Shikaku looked at Sasuke. "Where did you find Naruto, and where is A?" Sasuke told them exactly what he'd seen. When he finished, Tsunade's face showed confusion. "You mean A was attacked here as well?" Sasuke nodded. There was a samurai with orange hair wielding a long sword. He was unbelievably strong. He cut through A Susanoo with a single swing. Shikaku and the others exchanged incredulous looks. Susanoo's power was legendary. The histories of Madara and the first Hokage's battles, and the Susanoo seen recently from two Mangekyo Sharingan users in the Akatsuki, all proved its terror. The idea that a lone swordsman could slice through it with just a sword sounded impossible. "Are you sure?" Tsunade asked. "Could you have been under genjutsu?" Shikaku suggested. Sasuke bristled. "I'm telling the truth. Believe it or not." Tsunade didn't press the point further. "What about A? Did he take Naruto when he left?" Sasuke shook his head. "I saw him kill that samurai and then rush into the sandstorm. He left without Naruto. I don't know anything else." "So he released Amaterasu in the sand," Tsunade murmured, thinking aloud. "Why would he leave Naruto behind?" The only immediate explanation was that A had been injured and had to flee quickly, abandoning Naruto to escape Konoha's pursuit. But that only raised more questions. Why had A come all the way from the Land of Fire? Why hadn't the Akatsuki sent anyone to meet him? Who were those foes, neither fully human nor demon, lying in ambush beneath the yellow sand? What connection did they have to Akatsuki? Swish, swish. More wind and then reinforcements. Konoha's support troops and Tsunagakure's emergency team all arrived. With so many shinobi present, Shikaku turned to Tsunade. "Lady Tsunade, should we pursue or return to the village?" Several faces looked to her for a command. Many wanted to seize the chance to capture A, assuming he was wounded. Shizune, standing beside Tsunade, urged nervously, "Lady Tsunade, let's return to the village." Tsunade nodded. She knew her limits. During the earlier fighting, she had struggled to keep her hemophobia in check. If they continued the pursuit, she feared she might not be able to control it. "Return to the village," she decided. Far away, Shinji sped across the desert. Seeing that Tsunade and the others were not pursuing him, he allowed himself a small, relieved breath. Every moment counted now. After he had severed the anchor point in the Land of Wind, he wanted no more conflict with Konoha. He consulted a map from his ninja pouch. 5 anchor points had been marked: fire, wind, earth, lightning, and water. He'd crossed out fire and now marked wind off as well. Only earth, lightning, and water remained. He paused and frowned. Kyojuro Rengoku's appearance had made him rethink his calculations. The anchor points weren't just guarded by the 12 Kazuki. The Demon Slayer Corps' swordsmen might be deployed as well. That meant his previous plans could be hopelessly optimistic. The teams he'd sent to the remaining 3 anchor points might not be strong enough to deal with their defenders, and he was only one person. He could only go to one place to provide backup. He scanned the map, weighing the 3 remaining locations. "Which side should I support?" he muttered. Land of Earth. Karen tore through a canyon, seemingly tireless. The Grass Village shinobi sent to covertly assist her through the Akatsuki assessment were trailing behind, complaining. "That girl's got Uzumaki stamina. She still won't rest after all this traveling." Sigh. This assignment is brutal. I wonder what the Akatsuki's assessment will be like. Those people aren't to be underestimated. If they catch us, we'll be in deep trouble. In another canyon, Neji moved swiftly in the same direction, followed by a family squad led by Hyuga Hiyashi, the current head of the Hyuga clan. Chapter 197, Earth Country Anchor. The weight of Shinji's orders pressed down on Karen like a physical burden. If she failed, the whole world would be destroyed. She shook her head violently. No, she could not fail. Her mother, her classmates, they all lived in this world. She would not let them be wiped out. She steeled herself and pushed onward. After nearly 3 days of non-stop running, she had already penetrated deep into the land of Earth, within only a few dozen kilometers of the anchor points Shinji had told her about. That was close for a shinobi, but approaching the anchor points would almost certainly mean a life-or-death fight. Night was falling, so she decided to stop and rest, to prepare for the final push. She lit a small fire, boiled water, and ate beneath the stars while planning her next move. As Shinji's servant, she knew the scope of the operation and the demon's weaknesses. Sunlight had been mentioned as something the demons feared. "I'll rest through the night and move in daylight," she resolved. That would give her the advantage. In the distance, at the Grass Village team's camp, a jonin scowled at the bonfire she had lit. "That kid doesn't understand anything. Lighting a fire like that at night? Reckless." "Should we pull back a little?" another jonin asked. The team leader waved him off. "Don't worry, my perception jutsu will detect anyone who tries to sneak in. There are no Akatsuki members around. They're probably waiting at the assessment site. No need to panic." Still, one jonin remained uneasy. "This is Iwagakure territory. We should be careful." "If you're so worried, stand guard tonight," the leader said with a smile. A dark figure suddenly dropped into the camp. "Who's there?" the leader shouted. Everyone tensed as the shadow moved forward. The newcomer stepped out, grinning with an ugly, sickly smile. Blood reeked from him, and an overwhelming chakra clung to his form, suffusing the air. Written around his eyes were the words, "Upper Moon 6. "Akatsuki?" the team leader whispered, swallowing hard. "Sir, this is a misunderstanding." Upper Moon 6 drew a long sword from his back and strolled toward them. "A misunderstanding? How boring," he said, amused. The camp bristled with fear and anger. Even afraid of the Akatsuki, the jonin decided they had a duty to fight. "Move! Kill him!" he roared. Upper Moon 6 laughed. "That's more like it." Explosions detonated across the temporary camp. Scattered torches and tents were torn apart in a string of blasts. Karen, resting by her own fire, jerked to her feet at the sound. She saw flashes in the distance and heard combat. Instantly, she activated the mind's eye of the Kagura to see what was happening. This was the Grass Village team that had been tailing her, and she needed to know how events were unfolding. Her perception brought a sickening clarity. Several of the Grass Village ninjas' chakras were already dimming. The battle had only just begun, and they were taking heavy casualties. The assailant's chakra was enormous and utterly chaotic, nothing like a normal shinobi's. A chill ran through her. Demon. Karen's first instinct was to rush to their aid and take down the demon. But Shinji's last words stopped her. Use the Grass Village operatives as tools. They were meant to scout and delay, and her mission had only one objective: destroy the anchor points in the land of Earth by any means necessary. Her jaw hardened. The Grass Village ninjas were keeping the demon busy. Now was her chance to reach the anchors. She turned and sprinted toward her target. Elsewhere, on a different approach to the anchor points, Hyuga Hiyashi and a small party of Hyuga were embroiled in an ambush. Patriarch, we can't kill these things, one Jonin cried, fear in his voice as they struck and saw the monsters heal. Hiyashi remained calm. His Byakugan revealed the truth. The monsters did not die permanently, but each time their bodies were damaged, their internal chakra dropped. Their regeneration slowed a little with each wound, their auras weakened. If he and his men could keep breaking them apart, forcing them to refill and repair repeatedly, their chakra reserves would eventually be exhausted. That tactic required patience and endurance, but it worked. Hiyashi ordered coordinated strikes to maximize structural damage, forcing the demons to burn chakra to mend themselves, grinding the creatures down over time. A sweating Hyuga shinobi approached him breathlessly. Patriarch, could these monsters be Akatsuki tests for Neji? Chapter 198. Attract and Lurk. Hiyashi almost shook his head reflexively. If these near-immortal monsters really were the Akatsuki's test for Neji, sending an 8-year-old still in the ninja academy into that trial would be suicide. Even he, an elite jonin, had been shaken the first time he faced creatures like these. Neji, still a child, couldn't possibly handle them. But then Hiyashi reminded himself, this was a test designed by the Akatsuki. After Shinji, the one called the Butterfly, and the organization's high-profile attacks, including the assault on the 4th Raikage and the abduction of the Two-Tails Jinchuriki Yugito Ni, the Akatsuki had become infamous across the shinobi world. They carried weight like one of the great nations. If the Akatsuki had arranged this trial, perhaps there was more to it than a simple killing field. Before he could decide, several Hyuga clan members converged and reported in a chorus, "Sir, we've confirmed, no one else in the vicinity." Hiyashi allowed himself a short nod of relief. In the maze of ravines and rock outcroppings, the Byakugan's range and precision were far more reliable than tracking dogs or the parasitic destruction insect technique. One of the attendants asked quietly, "Sir, what shall we do now?" Hiyashi considered the question carefully. The sudden onslaught had him wondering whether the Akatsuki had detected them. But no Akatsuki operatives had shown themselves, and there was no sign of surveillance in the area. From a safety standpoint, the sensible move would be to withdraw with Neji. On the other hand, if the attack was merely a preset trigger and there were no Akatsuki watching, retreating now would mean wasting an opportunity to infiltrate their plans. After a pause, he spoke decisively. "Continue. Everyone, be cautious." The clan members exchanged looks but obeyed. They fanned out and moved on. Up in a tree, Neji picked at a bundle of dried rations and thought. He hadn't been told much. Shinji had been vague, since Neji wasn't one of his servants. He'd only been warned that failure of this operation could doom the shinobi world. Neji had interpreted those words as a reference to the Otsutsuki branch family on the moon, convinced he had been entrusted by Otsutsuki Hamura to correct their errors. Ever since he'd seen their terrifying might and the colossal Tenseigen, he'd felt a sting of shame at his own perceived inadequacies. A rustle from the forest snapped him back to the present. Neji's Byakugan unfurled automatically. Through its lens, he saw dozens of figures surging through the trees, each filled with a strange, glaring chakra. On chakra strength alone, most of them read like Jonin-level opponents. There were too many of them, and something about their aura was off, unnatural, almost inhuman. Hiyashi stepped up at that moment, and the sight of him startled Neji. By their agreement, Hiyashi should have been hidden behind him. Hiyashi raised a hand to stop him and lowered his voice. "You saw them, didn't you? Those coming toward us aren't ordinary ninja. They're a pack of monsters with near-immortal bodies." "What?" Neji sat up straighter. "These are very likely the tests the Akatsuki set for you," Hiyashi said. He shook his head. "Fortunately, I followed you. If I hadn't, you'd never have survived tonight." Neji's face grew darker, but he didn't panic. Hiyashi asked, "How far to the rendezvous you arranged with the Akatsuki?" "About 20 kilometers, Neji replied after a quick calculation. "Good." Hiyashi's expression hardened into resolve. "I'll deal with these monsters. You bypass this area and get to the agreed point. Find out what the Akatsuki are doing." Neji hesitated. "What about you?" Hiyashi offered a thin, confident smile. "I have a way to handle them." They both looked down the slope. Several elite Hyuga had already spread out at Hiyashi's signal, planting explosive tags densely among the rocks and trees. Hiyashi gave the final gesture. "Go." "Be careful. Neji said before he vanished into the dark. Hiyashi watched him go, a fond, worried smile touching his lips. Then he turned and began the grim work of setting the trap. Neji had barely cleared the valley before a series of explosions ripped the night. The sky flared as the charges detonated, flames licking halfway to the stars. For a moment, Neji worried for the clan's safety, but the mission, the security of the entire Shinobi world, pressed him forward. He tightened his jaw and ran toward the anchor points. On another approach, Karen moved like a shadow. With the mind's eye of the Kagura, her perception sliced through the dark. Demons and corrupted chakra stood out like lanterns. She slipped between patrols and avoided wave after wave of those creatures with near casual ease. The further she got toward the anchor points, the more of them she saw, already well over 100 within her range. Fortunately for her, these demons didn't suppress their chakra. Under her Kagura sight, they were painfully obvious. She dropped to the lip of a cliff and peered into a dark cave below. "So that's it," she murmured. The terrain there blocked the moonlight, perfect for an anchor point. No one had detected her. She pulled a hooded red cloud cloak over her head, used a transformation technique to alter her height and appearance, and then slipped a mask over her face. A group of dark figures suddenly poured out of the cave and bolted in one direction. For a moment she watched them, puzzled. Then realization hit. Something was drawing the demons away. That was exactly what she wanted. Fewer guardians near the anchor points meant a higher chance she could destroy them undisturbed. She tensed to move, but then a new sensation slammed into her, a massive chakra signature, coming from far away and closing with terrifying speed. She spun, instincts screaming, and saw a black, lightning-like silhouette tearing toward her across the night. Chapter 199, I'm So Scared. In the blink of an eye, a black, lightning-fast silhouette dropped down in front of Karen. Her heart lurched. The intruder bore unmistakable marks of a demon, and the words Upper Moon 6 were written in his eyes, but the bloodlust radiating from him and the violent churn of chakra around him were far stronger than any demon she had ever faced. This is a very, very powerful demon, she thought instantly. Her gaze flicked to the Grass Village Jonin the demon held in his grip. Cut, bloodied, and barely alive. She recognized him. He was the high-ranking Jonin team leader the Grass Village had sent to assist her, a prestigious figure now dangling in the hand of the Upper Moon 6 like livestock. "Oh, your outfit." The demon slanted a grin at Karen after a quick appraisal. "So you're the one who came for us." He had recognized her from her clothes. The injured Grass Jonin, coughing up blood, managed a barking laugh as he saw Karen and spat. "An Akatsuki member! You monster! Die!" Karen's face flushed awkwardly. The Jonin, badly hurt by the demon, clearly didn't know her and assumed she was the Akatsuki. The demon snorted and slammed the Jonin down so hard he hit the ground with a sickening thud, then turned his gaze back to Karen. "Everyone warns you to be careful around those in red clouds," he said. "I've heard all those stupid cautions." Killing intent pressed at the edges of Karen's senses, and she instinctively stepped back. The demon laughed and taunted. "You're not much, are you? After I eat you today, I'll apply to take your place in the blood battle. Remember the name of the demon who eats you, Kaigaku." Karen had faced demons before, but Shinji and Yuhi had always been by her side until now. Now she was alone. The demon before her was ferocious, and she could sense countless other demons lurking nearby in the cave. Fear tightened around her like a vice. Demons fed on fear, and the monster approaching her wore a grin that promised no mercy. "I'll twist off your head and offer it to the master," Kaigaku crooned. "The master will like this present." Karen took 2 more steps back. The Grass Jonin, battered and clinging to life after that last blow, watched her with mounting desperation. "What's wrong with this Akatsuki member? Is she a fake?" He was frantic. His only hope lay with the Akatsuki member in front of him. If she fell, so did he. Kaigaku, sure of his victory, drew his blood-stained longsword, eager to taste flesh and blood. Karen's fear hit a breaking point. She stopped retreating, and with everything she had, unleashed her dojutsu. She activated Susanoo. A red Susanoo bloomed on the cliff in an instant. First the skeletal frame, then the sinews, the muscles, and finally armor plating cascaded into being. Both Kaigaku and the Grass Jonin gaped. They had heard of Susanoo, but seeing one was different from hearing the legends. The red giant let out a roar that seemed to shake the soul itself. What had begun as a half-formed torso completed itself with a violent rush. The Susanoo grew legs and rose to its full height, then somehow doubled again. Its scale soon made it nearly impossible to look up at. The towering, armored figure brought its empty hands together. When they opened, a massive red spear materialized between them. Inside the Susanoo's brow, a crystalline space lifted Karen upward. Floating there, draped in a red-clouded cloak, she looked like a deity. An eerie light flared from her eyes and pierced the mask, roping over her face. Even from a distance, the glow sent a chill through those who stared. Is this the power of an Akatsuki member? The grass jonin murmured to himself, suddenly ashamed he had ever doubted her strength. But he was puzzled. The intelligence the Five-Cog Summit had compiled claimed the Uchiha clan's Susanoo was not like this. The Susanoo before him was far larger than any report had described. Kaigaku, the newly promoted Upper Moon 6, felt his confidence evaporate. The trembling prey that had shamed him a moment ago had become something godlike. He faltered. High above, Karen peered down at Kaigaku, her heart still hammering. Fear, raw and consuming, fueled her, and she pushed her dojutsu farther than she ever had. Her Mangekyo Sharingan's eye techniques were called Susanoo. Their functions were simple in essence. The left eye's power amplified Susanoo's strength, and the right eye's ability reduced Susanoo's chakra consumption. Because her left eye enhanced the Susanoo, and because fear left her no restraint, she activated every technique her Mangekyo could muster, pouring every facet of the dojutsu into the Susanoo. With a whistling cry, the near-complete Susanoo drove its spear down. The tip pierced Kaigaku and plunged into the cliff beneath him. The mountain shook and began to unravel. The collapse sent up a thunderous roar that drew out dozens of demons guarding nearby anchor points. They had rushed out to shred any intruders, but when they looked up and saw the gigantic Susanoo, they froze. Karen guided the Susanoo like a battering ram, crushing the horde in an attack that shook the earth. Demonic wails filled the air. The mountain tumbled into ruin. The grass jonin watched, trembling amid the debris, while Karen, still perched inside the Susanoo's brow, controlling its movements, felt the terror inside her swell. I'm so scared, she thought, the words repeating in her head like a refrain. What should I do? What should I do? Chapter 200, Sense of Mission. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Neji ran along the rough mountain trail, lungs burning like an old bellows. Shadows chased him from behind. Demons that Hiyashi's squad hadn't finished off had caught his trail. No matter how many detours he took, they kept homing in. Fortunately, he had the Byakugan and remembered Hiyashi's warning. Those creatures had nearly immortal bodies. He avoided getting entangled, broke through their pursuit, and pushed toward the anchor points with everything he had. The demons were determined not to let him reach them. Along the jagged path, the two sides collided again and again. Neji took wounds. Blood smeared his clothes and the rocks. The demons, intoxicated by the sight of blood, shrieked like animals ready to tear him apart. Neji glanced over his shoulder, jaw set. Saving the ninja world came first. If he had to die for that, he would. Then a roar ripped through the night. The ground trembled as if an earthquake had struck. Neji squinted toward the sound. Straight ahead, his destination. The Byakugan's range was limited. Only after he'd crossed several ridges and exhausted himself did he finally see what would be burned into his memory forever. In the valley below, a colossal red Susanoo towered over the battlefield, sweeping through the demon ranks with overwhelming force. Those hideous, regenerating monsters looked fragile beside it. Every casual stroke of the Susanoo's long spear cracked the earth. Its speed was frightening. Whole groups of demons were pulverized into meat and rubble before they could react. The demons that had chased Neji, seeing the anchor points threatened, abandoned him and turned toward the valley. Neji's eyes widened. For a moment, disbelief froze him, then he forced himself calm. So Shinji had arranged for other Akatsuki members to handle this. Because of what Shinji had told him, Neji had let himself believe there was a faction inside the Akatsuki that still upheld justice, and whoever stood beneath that hood and red clouds wearing a mask like Shinji's must be another of those few righteous members. Relief washed over him. With a power like that stepping forward, the crisis might be resolved. The Susanoo, however, puzzled him. It was larger and more formidable than the golden Susanoo he'd seen with Shinji, vast, godlike. And there were far more demons in the valley than he'd expected, hundreds. Two of them stood out, far stronger, their chakra dense. One was samurai-like, wielding a long blade crackling with black lightning. The other had grotesquely elongated, razor-sharp claws. Neji pushed his dujutsu to its limit. After focusing, characters glimmered in the demon's eyes. Upper Moon 6, Upper Moon 5. The two were newly promoted Upper Moons. The swordsman was Kaigaku, a fallen user of lightning-breathing turned demon. The clawed fiend looked like an ordinary demon elevated to a higher rank. Both were stronger than the rest, roughly elite Jonin level in speed, strength, and chakra, with near-immortal bodies that could rival a Kage. Yet before the red Susanoo, they were no better than the others. Their strikes were mere irritations, unable to move the giant. Any casual blow from the Susanoo reduced them to pulp. Even their regenerative auras were being drained by repeated injuries. Watching that, Neji couldn't help the thought. This was Uchiha power. Karen, younger and smaller in the valley, had pushed her Mangekyo Sharingan to its limit out of sheer terror. She was only 7, years away from graduating the academy and becoming a genin, and the strain showed. After a desperate burst, pain stung her eyes. Even with a resilient body, at that age she couldn't sustain multiple kaleidoscope eye techniques for long. Her dojutsu began to fail. Her physical attacks could harm demons, but they weren't as decisive as Shinji's Amaterasu. And there were too many demons guarding the anchor points. Overwhelmed, Karen instinctively activated her Susanoo and began to fall back. Her Susanoo wasn't complete. The lack of wings on its back prevented flight and proved it was only near completion. Neji watched her retreat, stunned. They had the advantage. Why withdraw? Then it hit him. There were too many demons at the anchor points. She was drawing them away so someone else could slip in and destroy them from within. A sense of duty flared up inside him. No hesitation. He dropped down the cliff where he had been hiding and, using the cover of the craggy path, moved toward the cave where the anchor points lay. Determination steadied his steps. He would get in and do what had to be done.